everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Today we have a people's poll, James. So just tell the people what they had the choices for and what ended up winning. What are we talking about?
Well, I can't believe Twitter, but I'm not really surprised. So there were three options. One was the prospect of a double game week 36 and potentially a deeper analysis on what may happen with the games that could well be postponed for the FA Cup final. In short, could be brought forward, could be moved back. What I thought would probably win this vote was the consequences of the information that we got last week, the consequences of double game week 32. We now know that Newcastle and Crystal Palace will double in game week 32. That is confirmed. Didn't vote for that. You voted for us to revisit something that we did, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Serge, on the People's Poll podcast, which was free hit 29 versus free hit 34. It's going to bleed into a little bit of chat perhaps about game week 33 as well, which is obviously likely to be a double game week. Where we currently stand for game week 29, we now know, which we didn't know when we did this a few weeks ago, the exact layout of game week 29. And this will now not change bar unforeseen circumstance, weather, high profile, death, that kind of gig. So there are 2 games postponed. Those are Villa Liverpool, which is obviously taking place tomorrow night, and Newcastle Crystal Palace, which is now going to be in game week 32. The other 16 teams play in game week 29. I guess first and foremost, Suj, how has that impacted things for you and your plans?
I was always originally on a free hit 29. And then, because I've still got bench boost, wildcard, and Arseman to use. So on top of that, I have three Liverpool, 3 Newcastle, and Morgan Rogers. So I've got 7 out as it stands for game week 29. So for me, it was always a game week 29 strategy. It hasn't particularly changed it by having the double in 32 now. I was never going to get to game week 29 with 7 out. Like, I wasn't holding Gakpo all the way through. I wasn't likely to hold Gordon all the way through. But Salah, Hall, Isak have got big value built up for me. Big value built up for me. We're talking over 1 million between them, maybe close to 2 million between them. I'm going to double check that. Trent, I've got a little bit of value, but not enough that I'm bothered about. But yeah, Gordon and Gakpo were always expendable, but that still means I'm going in with 5 players missing. And now that Newcastle have the double in 32, I don't want to sell Hall and Isak. I want to get them back for whatever reason. Plus, in case they have a double in 33. So I'm still the big compromise for me on game week 29 free hit was that I wouldn't be then working away to get Erling Haaland for game week 30. Less that if that's the sacrifice I've got to make, that's the sacrifice I've got to make, because there's other players that I'm going to want, and he's proven not to be essential in this game anymore, James. So for me, I'm still on game week 29 free hit, though I haven't yet decided, and still bench boost 33 most likely, and then Arseman and wildcard to figure out around it.
I think it's really changed for me since we last did this a few weeks ago. Now, I don't have the free hit, so I've not got an option in terms of what I do. But I do think what's happened with the fixtures has strengthened the case for a free hit in game week 29. I mean, to give you an example, Serge, I sent you a screen grab of my team of where it sits now, and I'm almost definitely going to go Amad Diallo to a Bournemouth player this week. Diallo looks like he's out for the season, so there's no reason to hold on to that. So it's probably going to be Cliver, right, as the example. Now, if I make that move this week, don't do anything else till game week 29, I'd be left with 6 players with 3 free transfers to deal with that. So without a doubt at this stage, if I want to get to 11 in game week 29, I have to take at least 8 points worth of hits over this period. And I think with me obviously adding Mateta last week, which I knew what I was doing when I did it, right? I decided that I might go short in game week 29, that I've obviously got even more than you. So I've got treble Liverpool, treble Newcastle, Morgan Rogers, and Jean-Philippe Mateta. 8 players unavailable now for game week 29. And my idea with these players is pretty similar to you in terms of Trent cuttable, Gordon cuttable, Rogers cuttable, Lewis Hall's kind of somewhere in the middle for me. Mateta, I
Gakpo
got
Carball.
in. I got in with the idea of carrying him through and going, right, maybe I'm only going to go with 10 players in game week 29. So maybe just take 4 transfers in 29 for a -4, do what we can do there, and have the power of Mateta, Isak, Hall, and Salah on the other side, which I really want. Of course, that's made me look at the prospect of chopping Mo to put Haaland in. And I guess Haaland is a kind of big sticking point around this because, as I said to you several times, I I absolutely hate the idea of free hitting in 29 to have Haaland against Brighton and then not having him the next week for Leicester at home. And it may even be on the path, which is currently projected, where City would double in 33. And I've began to look at it and question across game which 29 to 33, how much do I captain Mo? And I think the answer now is at the most 2 across a 5 week span. And even if I owned him in the weeks I don't captain him, I'm still going to bloody lose, aren't I? So
Yep.
maybe go like fall against it and take him on. Now, the principal idea of taking Mo Salah on just feels absolutely ridiculous at this stage. But when you look at the fixtures, 29, you're obviously not going to captain him. 30, there is definitely a debate. Haaland against Leicester, Isak against Brentford, Merseyside Derby rematch. 31, Salah goes to Fulham. City go to Manchester United. Isak's at Leicester. So, I
Yep.
mean, just on the face of it anyway, if Isak was at Leicester this week and Salah was at Fulham, I'd maybe take Mo on.
Yep.
And that might even be the week I'd most likely captain. 32 now is going to be Isak as long as he's fit. And 33 is going to be a doubler as well. So that's one thing that would put me off free hit in 29. And then obviously on my path now, I'm considering putting him in. But also as a consequence of trying to force Haaland in, now I've committed to Mateta and Isak. I'm probably only having one forward in 29, right? So if I do commit to Haaland, it's no Cunha, it's no Wood. Can't have them all. I suspect over that period, in and around 29 to 32, we'd probably all like to have all 5 of those players. It's a max of 3, isn't it?
Mm.
I think 3 hitters, by the way, in 29 are obviously going to go with the 3 that play that week. I'd be surprised if a 3 hit 29 team wasn't as a front 3, Haaland, Wood, and Cunha.
That's what my draft free hit for 29 currently is. Yeah. And I own Wood. I'm buying Cunha most likely before then anyway. So 2 out of the 3 I own already.
I put together a draft, so you can probably tell me what's different from this, and we'll put it on screen on YouTube. But for the benefit of the audio listeners, I'll read it all out. So Pickford in goal, and I think he's the most owned goalkeeper in terms of EO at the moment, in terms of live players. So I think with West Ham at home, I don't think people are going to particularly want to move that on. So I think Pickford would stay for most people, and also people thinking, I want to cover up the potential of Everton, who are in some good form at the moment. Same keeper?
No, I had Pickford as a reserve keeper. I put David Raya in because
Okay.
I hadn't tripled up on Arsenal.
Yep.
So I put David Raya in, but Pickford was my reserve keeper.
Yep. Fair. Gabriel I put in, Vardiol, and Rayanate Nori away to Southampton.
So you've also got Ola Aina on the bench and Robinson. So I've
Yeah.
got Gabriel, Gvardiol, Eight Nori, Aina, but I'd put Milos Kerkez in as opposed to Robinson because Spurs have always got a goal in them, even though, all the troubles. I think you'll be back to more players fit. So four of the 5 are the same. I would probably play Aina over Eight Nori, but to be honest, that's a future decision for me. It wasn't a right now decision.
I think the fact that's the 5 defenders I put there anyway, Gabriel, Vardiol, Eight Nori, Aina, Robinson, shows that this is affordable for anyone by
Yeah,
the way,
yeah.
and a free hit. 'Cause easy, you could Aina to Nico Williams, there's a million. Robinson to Castagne Anderson, there's another zero point 0.8 or so. So this is all kind of affordable for people in 29. My thought process on Aina Robinson and kind of highlighting them is obviously the EO ownership on Forest players as a collective and Robinson specifically. will be decent in that week. So 8 Nori's more kind of punty. I don't think he's not going to have huge ownership at that point. I do think on free hit, people will be very tempted to go Vardy, particularly if City have go out the Champions League tomorrow night and they've got a free midweek before. I think that will put people off a little bit. If City did get through and have got Champions League game the midweek before playing Brighton in 29, then you're more liable to have the rotation. As it would look on paper and be projected, City will have a free midweek building to it. So you assume the strongest players like Vardy will play. And I don't think there's a question that Vardy is in City's first choice 11 in Pep's mind. Midfield 4, I went Kluivert, Bumo. Again, thinking about the ownership of those carrying through is going to be pretty high. Bruno Fernandes away to Leicester. Phil Foden at home to Brighton, with Alex Iwobi as a first reserve. Again, that's easily downgradable to Nwaneri, isn't it?
So Kluivert and Bruno, I had both of those two. I'd thrown in Bowen over Bomo, but I've got money in the bank. So to be honest, that's interchangeable for me. If West Ham continue the current form they're in, then it would be Bomo over Bowen. But if West Ham find a bit of form and Bowen's doing well away at Everton, I don't know. I think that's a toss-up, depending on the form of the teams at the time, because Brighton are decent. I had Nwaneri as my cheap bench option because I hadn't used up my free Arsenal spots. The difference was, rather than Foden, I went Gibbs-White.
Yeah, don't run it.
I went Gibbs-White. I thought double up on Forest, all in on that. But yeah, I would have been playing Bowen/Bomo, Gibbs-White, Kluivert, Bruno Fernandes with Nwaneri on the bench. And the front three is the front three we've discussed. So there's very little difference between us. And I think the players that we've not agreed on are bench players. Iwobi versus Nwaneri, Robinson versus Kierke's, and also a toss-up. So I think that Game Week 29 free hit is going to be pretty damn template for most people.
Yeah, I think there would probably be a pool of 20 players. I mean, one thing is only one Arsenal. You could do it differently. I mean, you could easily...
I got two because I put Raya in, and I fancy that if Jackson's still out, and I think Arsenal are going to go on a run of clean sheets now where they really try and shore up at the back. So,
I mean, there's definitely a case to put your Nwaneri's, your Rayas, Salibas, as you said, maybe even Marino will be a thing at that point, right?
Yeah.
You could also do it. We go right, and we looked at this a few weeks ago. The idea of no Arsenal, and then just keeping Cole Palmer in now, which you could do easy. It's Palmer instead of Fernandes, and just Gabriel down, and that's it, done. Thin out the bench a little bit if you're a bit short on money.
Emirates,
yeah,
the Emirates.
But Palmer will still have good ownership going into that week, won't he?
He will, no doubt.
So you're potentially taking that on. I think if you're free hitting in 29, psychologically you don't want to leave yourself too exposed. As part where, like, I put Bumo in here. Again, people running through, a lot of them will have Brian Bumo. So certainly you could make a case here to go, yeah, I would go Semenyo rather than Bumo and not spend the money, or Dango Utara instead. But I think Bumo will have decent ownership. So it was a case of combination of attacking things here for me, and also keeping an eye on those that have good ownership. I would prioritise having Arsenal defensive in that week rather than having Cole Palmer. That would be more my take. It would be conflicting to have both. It's not to say you can't do it, but for 1 week, I think probably one or the other.
Yeah.
Or neither. You could certainly hedge your bets in terms of like Palmer and Nwaneri. That's different. That's obviously absolutely fine. In the same way I've done here with Bumo and Kluivert, two offensive players. It's not contradictory. That's fine. How many of these players do you have currently, or even on the free hit you did?
Well, so I've got Gabriel right now. I don't have Guardiola, but I do have Rico Lewis as a Man City defender. I don't have Kluivert, but I've got Semenyo. And then I've got Wood, and I will have Cunha. So yeah, not a huge amount, to be honest with you. Other players that I do have that are playing are Mikalenko, West Ham at home. Now, if I was trying to find a way to work through it, it's fine. And Cole Palmer, the aforementioned, and Flecken's got a game, Bournemouth away, obviously, as well. So I do have a keeper. But of that actual 15-man squad, only three that I currently own, and I'll own 4 before then. So it still makes it justifiable for me. And plus, the biggest thing is armband, right? Armband will be on Erling Haaland.
Who do you think's the best to take him on if you're not got him, if you're carrying through? Is it Cunha? Wood? It's one of them two, I think,
One of
isn't it?
those two. One of those two for sure. I'd probably go with Wood, but yeah, it's one of those two.
Okay. I've got two of the players I put at the moment, Pickford and Gabriel. That's it.
Wow. Mm,
I think for me now, if I hadn't cocked up as I did a few weeks ago, I'd probably be going towards free hit 29 now. I
yep.
certainly know that I wouldn't have hesitated about buying Mateta last week. I'd have been like, yeah, he's going in and I'm going to commit to free hit in 29 now. I would say for me, I think you probably want to be at around about that level where you've got 8 players from 29 blanking. Then I think, yeah, you want to really strongly look at that. And I think specifically now, if you've got really good coverage of Palace. So I think if, say, you've got Rodgers and Watkins, you're knowing that they're going to move on. Whereas if you've got Mateta, Munoz, these sort of players, you're probably more leaning into thinking these are going to be really useful for me on the other side. Remember, it's not just a double in 32 for Palace. It's Ipswich 28, it's Southampton 30. Those are the immediate fixtures before and afterwards. So I think if you've got really good coverage of Palace, you're really now looking more at free hitting in game week 29. But I think if I knew I could get to 29 and have 5 free transfers, rather than for me, I'd be landing there with basically needing to cover 5 players with 3 free transfers, I think I'd arguably still run through.
Mm.
So the volume of transfers you've got available also feels quite important. Now, obviously, in my case, I have to run through. I've got no choice. I knew what I was doing when I bought Mateta this week.
Who do Palace have the other side? Gameweek 30?
Southampton away.
And then you've got your Liverpool players have got Everton at home. Your Newcastle players have a home fixture against Brentford,
Brentford.
who've been a bit pony on the road. They're getting better, but they've not been great on the road. You want them all. And Brighton away for Villa's all right. It's fine. It's not spectacular, but it's all right. So really, I want them on the other side for 30, even 31. Fulham away for Liverpool, Leicester away for your Newcastle guys. Yeah, I want them. So being able to keep Hall, keep Isak, keep Trent and Salah through that period. And let's not forget Southampton for Liverpool before. I think for me now, free hits pretty much locked in for game week 29.
However, it's not just the teams that blank in 29 that have a good fixture afterwards in 30. And I think we can certainly mark down Liverpool, Newcastle, and Palace to say that. This is why we say Villa players, once this double is out the way, the likes of Rodgers, Watkins, if you've got a defensive one, become more expendable. I think that's the obvious ones. Newcastle, it's also worth saying, not great fixtures in the next few, considering they go to Liverpool in game week 27. And obviously, Liverpool themselves have City and Newcastle in the next two, but that Southampton game 28 lingers. I think, as said, Friday's draw might be quite important on that because I think for someone like me with Gakpo, who's obviously looking at that game, maybe, yeah, sort of Gakpo to Cunha. By the way, he's out tomorrow night. That seems to be confirmed now, but
Yep.
he's close to returning, so he could be back for the weekend. I'm also in a position where I can bench him this week. But if, as said, if Liverpool had PSG Wednesday, Southampton Saturday, and then PSG Tuesday around game week 28, then I'm nervous about Gakpo's minutes anyway. So I might be holding him for a fixture that he doesn't start. In which case, the idea of going, right, I need to go Gakpo to Cunha sooner, obviously appeals way more for me. But the teams who play in 29 who are attractive, many of them also have a game week 30 fixture that really appeals. So Wolves, the sustained run is really good and kind of begins arguably now, right? In fact, if you look up to sort of on my ticker, going up to roundabouts game week 33, 34, they are comfortably top Wolves and Bournemouth are right near the top as well. So those two teams really appeal. They've both got nice fixtures in 29. Bournemouth at home to Brentford is perfectly reasonable. If you wanted to free hit and go a treble up of Bournemouth, even those three midfielders, right? Utara, Kluivert and Semenyo, just put them all in.
Yep.
Wouldn't have a problem with that. Bournemouth have Ipswich at home in 13. Wolves have West Ham at home in 13. So both of them land quite nice. We've just said Manchester City lands nice with Leicester at home in game week 30. If you are carrying Palmer, I think specifically, but some people like me are probably going to have to carry Colwell, Tottenham at home, and then there's a couple more decent fixtures are good in game week 30. Arsenal, Fulham at home in 30, and it's a good run of fixtures for Arsenal afterwards. They all land okay. Even if you did go for Bowen,
Arsenal,
Wolves in 30, and then there's Southampton a few afterwards.
Arsenal have a good run from now, really, starting with West Ham. Like, if you wanted to add, I've looked at Raya Flecken to Raya now and just get it done and then hold him through because I can get fixated on I can get Raya for the free hit. I can't close my eyes to what comes before and what comes after as well, where there might be points. Like Gakpo to Cunha gives me exact money to go Flecken to Raya this week, and I'm like, okay, I think Cunha over the next 5 or 6 and Raya over the next 5 or 6 definitely outscore Flecken and Gakpo. I say definitely, you never know. But Flecken's given me 3 clean sheets in about 20 games, mate. So
Chris Wood, who's obviously going to be popular. Manchester United at home with 30. It's fine. There's not many teams I think have got a kind of a bad game week 30. So I think Manchester United at Forest, but I don't think it's going to be huge commitment to United assets in 29. I think for people like me running through, there's arguably no interest. United's fixtures are not great, so they've got City and Newcastle afterwards, 31 and 32 as well. Brentford go to Newcastle in 30, and Brentford's fixtures really stiffen up on the other side. So then they've got Chelsea at home and then Arsenal away as well. Everton go to Liverpool, and it's a tough run for Everton from 30. Fulham go to Arsenal. It's a tough run for Fulham from 30. Tottenham go to Chelsea. I would advise against Tottenham players in 29, considering it's 3 days after Europa League last 16 second leg, although it is at home. Leicester go to Manchester City. Brighton and Villa play each other. I don't think there's not going to be huge interest in Brighton for 29 anyway because they go to City.
yep.
And again, we said Villa are expendable. So you can spin your narrative, I think, with this either way and say those blanking 3 of the 4 teams have really good fixtures afterwards. But I would say the majority of teams who do play in 29 also have good fixtures in game week 30. There's a select few like Brentford, Fulham, Manchester United, where it begins to look tougher afterwards. And I think those who like with Bumo or Vissa would just be looking and thinking, I'm going to move that on in game week 30, most likely. And of course, Brentford could still double in 33, and then you might be holding anyway.
Yep.
I think it's worth considering, Suj, just a kind of a reminder of the layout of where teams kind of fall into groups. So we can kind of group all of these teams by specifics around about game week 29 and game week 34. And of course, at the moment, game week 34, we can only work on projections. The current projections for 34 is that 6 teams, Bournemouth, Manchester United, Manchester City, Villa, Newcastle and Ipswich, will have their games postponed because of the FA Cup semi-final. We presume those fixtures would get brought forward to game week 33. In the case of Bournemouth versus Manchester United, that would be a necessity if Manchester United make it through to the Europa League quarterfinals. That's because of the potential clash with the FA Cup final and Europa League quarterfinals. He does probably need Manchester United specifically, rather than just Bournemouth, to still be in the cup competition. United do have a challenging game against Fulham. And actually, by consequence of what Tottenham do in Europe, City versus Villa would almost certainly have to be brought forward. That's because Villa and Tottenham are scheduled to play each other on FA Cup final day. So Villa made the final and Tottenham was still in Europa League at the semi-final stage. Villa Tottenham would have to come forward. And you need to make that decision before the quarterfinals because you can't leave the potential for it to not be able to go anywhere. Remember, Villa's still in Europe as well, right? So that complicates things. I do think, having thought about it more, that Newcastle and Ipswich can still go anywhere. So I think the assumption and the majority of people's reaction on Friday when Newcastle Palace was announced for game week 32 was, well, surely they've announced this for 32 now to leave Newcastle Ipswich to be brought forward to 33 if it needs to. And the same for Arsenal Palace. It's almost definitely the case with Arsenal Palace. But with Newcastle Ipswich, I began to think about this a little bit more and wonder if Newcastle met the FA Cup quarterfinals, they play on the weekend, then 30 is midweek, 31 is obviously weekend. Then the following week, it's 32 weekend and now the midweek fixture against Palace. Then you got the 33 weekend. Are they then going to double in 33 back to back before the FA Cup semi final? And it made me wonder if the fixture might even stay in 34
Okay.
or be pushed back to 35. or was perhaps originally thought even pushed back to 36. But I think logically we're thinking because Newcastle Palace has gone forward to 32, surely Newcastle Ipswich would get brought forward. But I also think it might be done because I think Arsenal v Palace, in the event that Palace made the semi-finals, is another one that's almost definitely got to come forward to 33. Newcastle Ipswich wouldn't have to. And there is a possibility that he could stay in the same game week and just be played on the Wednesday after the semi-finals. Does that feel that outlandish to you?
Not hugely, not hugely. I mean, we've been talking all season about this game week 36 midweek that's been left blank. You're pretty sure it's not going to have anything in it now?
I think it's 50-50. Because as well, there's certain fixtures that we know, as we've said, like Villa Tottenham is an example we've just given, if subject to other cup involvements, and Chelsea Manchester United's another one where United are in Europa League final, they've got to come forward. I remember it only needs those teams to hit the semi-finals of the Europa for it have to be brought forward, because you're not going to wait till the semi-finals to be done. You need to, because then you're like 6 days notice to arrange the game. So there were a couple of fixtures that would have to get brought forward to 36. So any idea that 36 can't have doubles is ridiculous. There's a couple of fixtures that would potentially have to be brought forward to 36. My suspicion is that, I mean, currently projection would be, say, a Man City Newcastle final. My current projection on their respective fixtures against Bournemouth and Arsenal would be that they stay in 37 and are played in the midweek afterwards. So it's a little bit dependent on who makes the final. Now, we're approaching the 5th round here. So to say one way or the other, no. There is absolutely the possibility that you may have 4 teams who double in 36, who then blank in 37. That's a potential game changer. But you could hold your free hit for that and not know. And it might just be that it's 35 to 38. It's just completely normal. 40 fixtures, 10 in each. That could be how it runs at the end. I think what we probably need to do is just group people and group the teams at this moment. So there are 2 teams, Suj, who won't play in 29, who are currently projected to blank in 34. Those are
Aston Villa.
Yeah.
Crystal Palace.
No,
sorry. Crystal Palace do play in 34.
Projected at the moment.
Newcastle.
Correct. So at the moment, Villa and Newcastle are projected to blank in 34 and obviously blank in 29.
Just in case people think I'm a genius about figuring that out, I've got FPL.team up in front of me. You can click a button that says set up James's predicted fixtures and see them in a very easy, clear grid in front of you. Just may as well give Pete a shout out. Go on to FPL.team if you want to try and plan your team out.
You can also move the fixtures yourself.
Nice.
So if you think, no, I think Newcastle Ipswich is going to be in 36, you can move the fixture there to see what it looks like. That's a tool that you can do on FPL Team.
Nice.
So which team, Suj, will blank in 29 that we know will definitely play in 34?
Liverpool and Palace.
Just Liverpool.
Oh, just Liverpool.
There's only 4 teams definitely playing 34 at the moment. It's Liverpool v Tottenham, Chelsea v Everton. So by consequence, Suj, which team do we know will blank in 29 and are projected to play in 34?
Palace.
Correct. So who are the only 3 teams that we know will definitely play in 29 and 34?
Play in 29 and 34. So Arsenal. There's 3 teams, did you say?
So these are definites. 3 teams will definitely play in 29 and definitely play in 34.
Arsenal
Nope.
is one. Oh, no, they're playing Palace, aren't they? Who have Brentford got? Forest. They're out of the cup, aren't they?
Nope.
Forest not out of the FA Cup? No, they're not. They beat so-and-so, didn't they? Not Brighton, West Ham. Chelsea, Everton are both out.
Yeah.
So Chelsea, Everton.
Yeah.
You are playing Liverpool. Yeah, so Tottenham.
So Chelsea, Everton, Tottenham are the only 3 teams at this moment we know will definitely play in 29 and 34. Which 4 teams, Suj, are playing game week 29 and are projected to blank now in 34?
Projected to blank.
Correct.
Villa?
No.
Why are they not?
Don't play in 29.
Oh, sorry, they don't play in 29. My bad. Bournemouth are playing in 29 projected. Ipswich, their game with Newcastle is going to get brought forward. City
Yeah.
are playing in 29 and have been brought forward. Man United are playing in 29,
Correct.
and their Bournemouth game is going to be brought forward.
So obviously the FA Cup fifth round, which is between 27 and 28, will obviously have an impact. And of course, importantly, the quarter-final draw, right? Let's be really honest. The way that the fifth round draw has worked out, a lot of the favourites are probably going to go through. We'd said the fourth round was sketchy because there was a lot of teams away from home. The fifth round, he's probably going to go a little bit more to script, but it doesn't mean that projections won't move afterwards. Perfect example would be get Man City drawn away to Newcastle and Villa drawn away to Bournemouth. And what do? We projecting City and Villa to stay in 34 maybe under that circumstance? Probably not. But then we'd be projecting Newcastle Ipswich to stay in 34. So there are definitely things that can change and move. It's why I said to a lot of people, I think if you're unsure, head towards running through game week 29, come to your conclusion decision on what you want to do on strategy before game week 28. That's your key point. I think at least to lock in A versus B. But it should certainly lock in probably when you're playing your free hit. It might be your A versus B on which week you want to play a wild card, for example. We'll come back onto that in a bit. So we can group these teams. The teams we haven't mentioned, Suj, there are 9 of them. We don't need to go through them all. They all play in 29 and are projected to play in 34. But I think at this moment, if you're running towards 29 and thinking you want a free hit 34 and run towards the double in 33, Bournemouth, Ipswich, Man City, Manchester United would arguably be your friends. Now, Ipswich and Manchester United, we've said, are bad runs from 30, but Bournemouth and Manchester City stay good. So Bournemouth, and we discussed this yesterday on the podcast, no matter what your strategy is, Bournemouth appeal. No matter what you're doing, the fixtures are too good for too long, and Wolves are about to come into that exact same category as well. The difference with Wolves is at the moment, you're not predicted, obviously, to have a double in 33. But if you're someone like me who's short on chips, the fact that they've got good fixtures all the way through and in 34 are scheduled to play Leicester, they look quite good for me, right? So the likes of Cunha, 8 Nori, absolutely appeal under that circumstance. I put together, Suj, a free hit 34 team based on the current projections. So again, that's removing the 6 teams, Bournemouth, Man United, City, Villa, and Newcastle against Ipswich. And this is what I came up with, Suj. Raya and Gabriel, double Arsenal defence, at home to Palace. Trent at home to Tottenham. 8 Norrie at home to Leicester. Saka, I think by this point, back. Home to Palace. Salah and Diaz at home to Tottenham. Palmer, home to Everton. Up front, there's Wood and Cunha again. Brentford at home and Leicester at home, respectively. And Raul Jimenez away to Southampton. The one interesting thing, just to shout out the bench here, Jorgensen, Robinson, Adarabioyo, and Sangari, who's a 4.3 million midfielder, probably gives you an indication that under this, the money might be quite a bit tighter. Game week 29, I don't think money's going to be too much of a problem. Game week 34, under these current projections, it might be. Now, we'll also factor what we'd said. Is it possible that Newcastle and Ipswich could stay in game week 34, even if it's postponed? Now, I think under that circumstance, you want to put Isak in here. You want to put Hall in here. And you arguably want to put Gordon in here. Now, money-wise, what are you doing to make that happen? Okay, you could cut Saka to make that easier, and then it probably works. But by that point, do you want to free hit it?
Yeah, the more I look at it on screen, big issue for me with bench boost and wildcard around that time, assuming I've used my free hit previously, is that the players that have a double in 33 don't play in 34. So do I really, really, really want to steam in to 15 doublers for 33, knowing that my only option is to wildcard out of it? Because I'm never going to get a team out in 34 otherwise. That's the sacrifice, right? Because I won't have used my free hit for 34 to cover that. Or if I've rolled 5 free transfers up till game week 34 to come out of game week 33, I then look at it and I'm like, okay, well, in game week 33, even though it's a double, do I want to miss Arsenal at Ipswich? Or am I happy to have three of them? And guess what? In your free hit 34 team, there's three Arsenal. And can three Arsenal players at Ipswich, two defensive and an attacker, whoever it is, give me as many points in a single game week against Ipswich? Yes. And let's not forget Brentford at home the week before. So I can build towards this. Liverpool away at Leicester. Do I want in a single game week to not have triple Liverpool away at Leicester and then carry them through into 34? I do. And guess who Liverpool have got the week before? West Ham at home. So I can see myself despite going for bench boost in 33, having six at least single game week players in my team, triple Arsenal, triple Liverpool, which then means, let's say the rest of my team is all doublers. I've got 5 free transfers to get me to 11 players the week after, and then work my way through 35, 36, 37 should I need to. But then I haven't used my wild card anyway. So I might even wild card in 34, but still have Arsenal and Liverpool players that I've carried through. So the interesting thing is, like, the bench boost no longer looks like I'm working to just get 15 doublers in for the sake of it.
Yep, I think that's a very valid point. It's worth saying in the case of Arsenal, if, say, Palace made a semi-final rather than Manchester United, you would now lose 8 teams from game week 34. Arsenal would double in 33, but
Makes
now
it
give you
a bit more attractive.
now give you a headache in 34.
Yeah, but then I'll have only triple Liverpool as single game week players in 33, and my wild card in 34 is even more useful to me then, because I'm getting rid of all those Arsenal players as well.
So a game week 33 free hit that I put together based on the current projections. So treble Man City, Vardiol, Foden, Haaland, Everton away and Aston Villa at home. Treble Newcastle, Hall, Gordon, Isak, Villa away, Ipswich at home. Double Bournemouth, Kirkes, Kluivert, Palace away, Manchester United at home. Double Manchester United, Onana and Bruno Fernandes, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away. And Ollie Watkins, Newcastle at home, Manchester City away, with, for the record, Rodgers, Howson on the bench, and Jacob Greaves I put there to highlight that Ipswich will have a double game week as well. So this is the biggest thing, right? There's every chance that the teams that you want to attack in 33 will double, will then blank in 34. That makes it the most difficult to manipulate to get the very best of the 2 weeks, right? If you run from now to game week 33 without using any chips, you've got how many free transfers, Suj?
Now till 33.
8?
Yeah.
Subject, you might even have even more in the bank. Right?
Well, I've got 5 in the bank, something about 13.
Right, so you've got 12.
Yeah, 12, sorry, yeah.
So I think that needs thinking about. You also have a wild card.
Correct.
And you could set up a wild card for what you do over these weeks as well. So I know, for example, wildcard 30, 31, 32, particularly for those who lose the assistant managership, because as many of the rest of us who have got it left probably want to do 31 to 33 with the Arseman. But wildcard in those weeks to then set up to bench boost 33, I completely get it. Can I just clarify some of the real problems? Game week 30, having discussions again on socials about concerns that we won't know the exact layout of 33 when game week 30 deadline comes around. The game week 30 deadline is on the Tuesday. The FA Cup quarterfinals are the Saturday and the Sunday before. I think there's even a strong possibility that the game week 30 deadline will be on the Monday. I think there's every chance that particularly Chelsea Tottenham, because they don't play that weekend before, could well be on the Monday night. I think that's also the case for the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton as well. That one of those 2 fixtures, as it stands now, could be brought forward to the Monday. As discussed on the Chip Strategy podcast, there isn't actually anything stopping it being brought forward to the weekend and becoming doubles in 29, but we're in agreement that that's an extremely unlikely possibility at this stage, because the whole idea of keeping FA Cup quarter-final weekend free of Premier League fixtures is not to put Premier League fixtures in their place. But think about your wildcard 30, right? Let's say that our semi-finalists are what we're projecting, right? So Man City, Villa, Newcastle, Bournemouth. And we're going to lose the 6 teams that we originally said from 34 to 33, and you wildcard 30 because you want to get away from maybe you've got some shit in 29, you've got too many Man United, too many Brentford, you want to move on, those sort of things. And you're setting up now to bench boost 33, only for Newcastle and Ipswich to stay in 34. Now what?
Yeah, I get
Now
that.
you've got Newcastle assets with a single away to Villa and you're bench boosting in a week. Now if it's Isak, that's great. If it's Hall and Gordon, don't feel so great.
No,
And of
particularly
course,
when particularly when Liverpool players have got Leicester, Arsenal have got Ipswich. There's other single game week players that are better than Newcastle's single game week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my point being there is there are certain fixtures, Bournemouth, Man United, I think City, Villa particularly. If they're postponed from 34, if Tottenham and Man United are still in Europe, they're highly likely to be brought forward to 33. But in the example of Newcastle against Ipswich, we cannot be certain. We can all sit here and go, well, that was logical that now they've put Palace in 32 with Newcastle, that surely Newcastle Ipswich would go to 33. I'm not moving the fixture. You're not moving the fixture. None of us are moving the fixture. We don't factually know anything. And I think there's a strong possibility that at deadline of game week 30, we'll be guessing. And we can all guess together, and there's a strong possibility we'll be right. But there's also a possibility that we'll be wrong. Also, game week 32, people looking to wildcard in game week 32. And I understand that because that gives you a little bit more time. Now, surely, if you're doing it in 32, you were doing it to bench boost 33, right? You're going a week before to bench boost 33. I get that. But what now if Newcastle and Palace don't double in 33? And I've just given you an example where that wouldn't happen. Arsenal Palace stays in 34. Newcastle Ipswich stays in 34. So you've got a double 32. Not great single fixtures in 33. They cover you 34. Are you going to wildcard in 32 to bench boost 33 and ignore the two teams that have got a double right in front of your face?
Yeah. Problem.
Now, these things might not be a problem, but they might be. And I think this is why nobody at this stage should lock in definitively to wildcard. I really don't like 30. I can't stress this enough. But I don't think you should necessarily even lock into 31 or 32 at this moment. You can have a principal idea, but you need to think about that. If you're wildcarding 32 to bench boost 33, what do you do if neither Newcastle or Palace double in 33? Because, I mean, with Palace particularly, do you want to bench boost with players against Bournemouth as a single fixture?
I was kind of ignoring Palace for the 32 double. When I say ignoring, I definitely have one. I might have two. I can't be bothered to get three. Was my
And point
approach
is
to it.
that might be your choice. Is you go right, I'm going to ignore them, and
Mm,
maybe you go, yeah, I'm going Isak Gordon Hall as an example. Maybe you've rolled a couple of transfers. Maybe if you've got three free transfers, you can put them all in and then take them all out
take
if
them
they
all out.
don't double. Yeah. And I guess people on that strategy are possibly also going wildcard 32, bench boost 33, free hit 34.
Wildcard 32, bench boost 33, free hit 34. Yep.
Correct. And it might work out perfectly. In fact, I think there's a good chance it will work out perfectly, but it might not. The rolling of transfers is the biggest thing that people can do at the moment. If you're like me and you've got an Amad Diallo that is out for the season, it needs replacing, doesn't it? But maybe you don't need to rush to sell Cody Gakpo when Arnie Slot's saying he'll probably be back for the weekend. Maybe the information is just way more important at the moment than trying to seek out that next move. I think if you're heading towards 29, you're trying to do as little as possible between now and then. You also don't want to buy players who could get injured between
Between
now
now
and
and then.
29, right? That's not to say that would happen, but that's an unlucky consequence that could happen, right? So I think if you've got 50-50s, I keep saying this week on week, if you've got 50-50s on should I buy this player for this player, arguably in many cases at the moment, it's a don't. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do things like what I've just done and attack Mateta and gone, I really like Mateta's fixtures. F to 29 right now. I'll deal with that problem later on. But unless you've got something you really want, wouldn't bother at the moment because there's a lot more information to learn. I do think free hit 29 has become way more attractive than it was, but you can't escape the fact that the teams that double in 33 will probably blank in 34. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think my strategy for managing that, James, is to have single game week players in 33.
And that's where, yeah, I mean, for me, for
Arsenal
example,
against Ipswich, Liverpool, Leicester. I've said it a couple of times. Those just stand out to me as things that a lot of people who will try and go for 15 doublers will ignore and might get themselves stuck.
if I need to run through, yes, the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool both playing in 34 and both having good single game week fixtures in 33 really appeals to me. Chelsea as well, actually, for me, like with Palmer, other than actually ironically 29 itself, the fixtures are pretty good.
Mm.
He's not dropped off a cliff to the extent I think he's a terrible footballer, right? It's just the returns aren't coming at the moment and Chelsea are in a bad run. Doesn't mean they won't like refine their form during the course of this period. So someone like Palmer looks like a better hold for me moving forward. He's not going to be my sacrifice if I want to get Haaland in 29. I can't see that. I need everybody I can get in that game week. I would add, Suj, that I think for me, because my situation is so cocked up, there's every chance I will wildcard in the blank now of 34.
To fix everything, just work towards 33, fix it in 34, and find the alternative strategy to see you out till the end of
Yeah.
the year.
So I can hit City harder, for example, maybe Villa if I want to, Palace. I can hit all that harder if I want to on the path, knowing that in 34 there's my escape back from those teams because I don't have the free hit.
Right.
And I think the fact 34 will land nice enough where there's likely to be, at a minimum, Liverpool and Chelsea with good fixtures. And I think at least one of Wolves or Arsenal also with good fixtures. Maybe Newcastle was said as well. That I think I can do that. The one problem I'll have with wildcard in 34 is obviously I won't know who's got through to the FA Cup final.
Right.
So in terms of the fixtures coming forward or not, I would probably have to pick a wildcard team that was really balanced across the games that could be postponed in 37.
So maybe give yourself only 4
in case they were
players that might end up missing out in 37.
correct.
Yeah.
But I'd almost definitively pick a team based on different circumstances that was going to leave me with, okay, if 37 is a blank, I've got 11 players. I'd need to be quite cautious of that. That's a conversation for the other side of the FA Cup quarterfinals and stuff like that. And it might be that the semi-finals look straightforward, where it's, I don't know, Newcastle against Ipswich and City against Burnley, and you go, okay, I think the final is going to be Man City against Newcastle, and you can take more of a chance. But I think there's every chance in the quarterfinals, and this is important. If all these favourite teams do go through in the fifth round, we are liable to get fixtures like Bournemouth against Villa in the quarterfinals, which will be really tough to call.
Yeah, they will. You're right. Cool. There's a rundown for you. I think it's slightly shorter than some of the chip pods that we've done, but super packed with information. As mentioned, head over to fpl.team if you want to see the fixtures. If you want to support the show and go to patreon.com/Planet FPL, you'll also get access to James's fixture planning spreadsheet from basic tier upwards, which is super useful as well. What's tomorrow, James?
Us James stream tomorrow.
Nice.
Clayton's unavailable on Wednesday. He's got some family commitments. So Clayton James show is Thursday. So we've got Fulham Palace, by the way, Friday, Clash the Correspondents, Lewis James and Rory McLaughlin-Dowd. And yes, we'll be asking Rory if we should be putting the Arsemanship on Oliver Glasner at Fulham. Unless obviously Villa win tonight, then that's off the table. It's worth saying for the Arsemen out there, the man you wanted for game week 24 and 25 was Marco Silva. That's the highest scoring manager.
He's crazy, isn't it?
Bonuses against Newcastle and Forest, right?
Yep.
But that's been the highest scoring one across the 2 game weeks. So Ask James, that's penciled in for 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. And it will be that time unless Suj says, can you move it?
Cool. Righty ho. Listeners, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. I forgot what I was saying there. Or if you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell. Leave us a comment on YouTube and let us know what your strategy that you're thinking about. You never know. There's something that we might have missed that might be working well for people. But most importantly, stay safe, look after yourselves, and ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Cue music, please. Man child.